morning, good afternoon, good evening. Myself, Vishnu Rajan, with metric number 286996. Our group will be presenting today the title Increasing GDP, Gross Domestic Product, is a necessary but not sufficient condition to improve living standards in less developed countries. Gross domestic product, which is GDP, is a major indicator of its degree of development and health. Usually, a year or quarter, it displays the value during a given period of time of all commodities and services produced in a nation. Since it provides a whole picture of activities of the economy and maybe be used as a benchmark to evaluate an economy's size, output. There are three main methods to determine GDP, which are income approach, expenditure approach, and also production approach. Well, the income approach, which compiles all the money, wages, profits, taxes, and subsidies bring in. The expenditure approach adds up all the money, people, businesses, government, and also the net exports expenditure. And the production approach, which adds up the value added at each level of production across all sectors. Well, GDP is significant since it reveals the rate of economic development. Rising GDP indicates that an economy is expanding and producing more goods and services, as well as perhaps even employment is in a good state. Although the GDP is a very significant part of the economics, also influence decisions of our national development, but it also has its shortcomings. Well, it ignores how the wealth is distributed, the environmental damage, unpaid labor, or the general state of a society. So, our group, we partly agree that increasing GDP is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for improving life standards in less developed countries. So, growth of the GDP is crucial since it raises national wealth, therefore, augmenting national resources and employment possibilities. It prepares the ground for funding critical public services, including infrastructure, healthcare, and education. GDP increase by itself is insufficient to raise everyone's quality of living. Many times, economic development does not result in equitable distribution of wealth. So a great number of people live in poverty. That what's lead to poverty. To clean water, healthy surroundings, and a stable government. These are such things that GDP does not being a contributing factor to developed countries or a national development. GDP cannot evaluate these factors. So GDP growth must be matched with policies addressing inequality, expenditure in sectors including education and healthcare, and also environmentally friendly practices that last if it strong institutions and excellent government are also necessary to properly transform financial successes into social development. So this GDP is not the only condition that a national development or a less developed country is developing. All of these factors are also considered to be considered as a factor, a contributing factor to a developing country.
By understanding how GDP acts as a catalyst for growth and drives the economic foundation of a nation. Firstly, GDP growth is the cornerstone of a nation's economic progress. It directly impacts income generation, job creation, and also revenue expansion. For example, as businesses grow due to a rising GDP, they demand more labor, which increases wages and boosts consumer spending. This creates a ripple effect across the economy, ensuring sustained growth. Secondly, the relationship between GDP and employment is vital. For instance, if a manufacturing sector grows, it results in higher production, which requires more workers. This directly reduces unemployment rates, while simultaneously increasing household incomes, enabling people to spend more on goods and services. This positive cycle reinforces the economy further. Last but not least, Higher GDP growth attracts both domestic and also foreign direct investments or FDI. A growing economy is seen as stable and profitable by investors. For example, when a GDP rises, international companies are more likely to invest, bringing capital, expertise, and technology that spur further growth. In summary, GDP growth serves as a foundation for economic prosperity by fostering income, employment, and investment, all of which are essential for a sustainable development. Let's explore how GDP growth contributes to a nation's fiscal resources and development. Firstly, GDP growth strengthens a government's fiscal position by increasing tax revenues. These revenues allow governments to invest in critical areas like infrastructure, healthcare, and education. For example, better infrastructure reduces business costs, improves connectivity, and also enhances access to services for citizens, creating a foundation for further growth. The impact of GDP growth is particularly evident in developing countries. Let's take the Bangladesh as an example. With consistent GDP growth over 6% annually, its booming textile industry has employed over 4 million people, lifting millions out of poverty. Similarly, Vietnam's rapid growth in manufacturing has reduced unemployment and raised living standards. In Ethiopia, GDP growth has enabled large infrastructure projects like the Addis Ababa Djibouti Railway, which connects rural and urban areas, promoting inclusivity. GDP remains a global benchmark for economic progress. However, it has limitations. It doesn't account for income distribution, environmental depletion, or quality of life. To address this, complementary metrics like the Human Development Index, which is HDI, and the Genuine Progress Indicator GPI provide a more comprehensive view for development. For example, HDI includes health and education, while GPI considers sustainability. In conclusion, GDP growth does not only provide governments with the resources to improve living standards, but also transform economies and society. However, using additional metrics ensure a broader understanding of progress and development.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Akila binti Nazaruddin. My metric number is 286979. Okay, now I'm gonna explain the limitations of gross domestic product (GDP) as an economic indicator. While GDP is widely recognized as a measure of economic health, it fails to capture several critical aspects of well-being and prosperity. So first of all, we need to understand the GDP. So GDP represents the total monetary value of all goods and services produced within a country. An increase in GDP is often interpreted as economic growth. However, this perspective overlooks significant issues, particularly income inequality. Many nations experiencing rising GDP alongside persistent wealth gaps, raising questions about the true benefits of economic growth. For the second is the relationship between growth and inequality. So, economists have long debated the connections between economic growth and income inequality. Early economists like Adam Smith and David Ricardo has emphasized capital accumulation as a driver of a growth. However, modern economists argue that excessive inequality can hinder long-term growth by limiting social mobility and access to essential services like education and health. As technology advances, the demand for specialized skills creates a widening gap between high-skilled and low-skilled workers, further exacerbating income disparities. So next, non-monetary contributions. Another limitations of GDP is exclusion of non-monetary transactions. Activities such as household work and volunteerism contribute significantly to social well-being but are not reflected in GDP calculations. For instance, Tasks like childcare or community service enhance quality of life but lack monetary value in formal markets. Some countries, including Sweden and Norway, have begun efforts to account for these non-market contributions to provide a more comprehensive view of economic health. So, for the next is environmental externalities. GDP also neglects negative externalities associated with economic activity such as pollution and resource depletion. While this industrial output may boost GDP, the accompanying environmental costs are ignored. This oversight can lead an overly optimistic assessment of economic conditions, failing to consider sustainability or the long-term welfare of society. So, for the long-term economic applications, high levels of income inequality can negatively impact overall consumption as wealth becomes concentrated among a small portion of the population. This decline in consumption can slow economic growth and deter investment due to perceived instability. Moreover, limited access to education for low-income households stifles human capital development, further hampering productivity and innovation. In conclusion, while GDP serves as useful tool for measuring economic activity, it falls short in assessing overall prosperity and quality of life. The United Nations has developed alternative measures like the Human Development Index (HDI) that incorporate factors beyond GDP, such as health and education. Recognizing the limitations of GDP is crucial for understanding a country's true economic health and social well-being. So thank you for this attention. I hope this discussion has provided valuable insights into the limitations of GDP as an economic indicator and encourage us to consider a broader perspective of measuring prosperity and well-being. That's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone. I'm Bhuwani Sidambaranathan, metric number 285276. So now I'm going to explain regarding what are the alternative indicators for GDP and how the indicators provide a more holistic approach to understand the developments. The Human Development Index or HDI was developed by the United Nations Development Programme or UNDP as a composite measure of human progress. HDI assesses a country's development across three key dimensions. The first is health, evaluated using life expectancy at birth, which reflects a population's overall well-being and access to healthcare. Second is education, assessed through two key indicators: the mean years of schooling for adults and expected years of schooling for children. The third one is standard of living. This is measured by the GNI per capita adjusted for purchasing power parity or PPP. Unlike GDP, which only measures economic production, HDI incorporates social aspects of development, giving us a broader understanding of progress. For example, two countries with similar GDP levels may have very different HDI rankings due to differences in healthcare access and education quality. To illustrate, Malaysia consistently ranks high in HDI due to its effective healthcare and education initiatives. This demonstrates how social development complements economic growth. Ultimately, HDI emphasizes that development is about expanding people's choices and enhancing their capabilities, not just increasing income. Next, we have the Gini coefficient, a statistical measure of economic inequality. It ranges from 0 to 1, where 0 represents perfect equality, meaning everyone has the same income. 1 represents perfect inequality, meaning all income is concentrated in the hands of a single individual or group. The Gini coefficient complements GDP by showing how wealth is distributed across a population, thus reflecting the inclusiveness of economic development. When a country experiences high GDP growth but also has a high Gini coefficient, it often means that wealth is concentrated in a small elite, while large portions of the population do not experience significant improvements in their living standards. This is common in resource-rich countries where wealth from resource exploitation tends to be concentrated among business and elites, resulting in rapid GDP growth but low equality rankings. In contrast, countries with lower Gini coefficients such as those in Scandinavia show more equitable wealth distribution, which helps raise the overall standard of living. The Gini coefficient highlights the need for redistributive policies such as progressive taxation, minimum wage regulation, and social safety nets to ensure that economic growth benefits all citizens. The final indicator is the Social Progress Index or SPI. Unlike GDP, SPI focuses on social and environmental outcomes alongside economic performance. It evaluates a country's progress across three dimensions too. The first one is basic human needs include essentials such as food, water, shelter, and personal protection. Second is well-being foundation. That this dimension covers healthcare, education, and environmental sustainability. Third opportunity reflects individual liberties, inclusivity, and access to higher education. SPI provides valuable insights into how well a country's prosperity translates into actual improvements in living standards. For instance, a country with a high GDP but poor environmental policies may score low on the SPI due to issues like air pollution or limited access to clean water. Conversely, countries with robust social programs but lower GDPs can achieve higher SPI scores. This shows that social and environmental issues must be addressed just as much as economic productivity for genuine societal progress.
Hi, lecturer. My name is Tuzio and my metric number is 702564. This part is about conditions for the growth of gross domestic product to efficiently improve the living standards. Firstly, let's talk about the redistributions policy in terms of taxations. Adjust the income tax, make high income earners pay more taxes and low income earners pay less. New taxes can also be levied, and the money is used to be subsidize vulnerable groups such as poor, the elders, the displaced to ensure their livelihoods. Social security also needs to be improved. Expand medical insurance, increase their reimbursement region, establish unemployment relief, and train the unemployed. In this way, everyone's life will be stable during economic inflation. This way, can everyone's lives will be stable during economy inflections. This page is about public service investment. Investment in public service is very important in healthcare. Build more hospital and clinics, good equipment, and train doctors, and conduct endemic prevention research well. In education, invest in basic, higher, and vocational educate, improve school condition, enhance the level of teacher, cultivate practical talented, and provide skill training and enable everyone to have a better employment and earn more money. Transportation and communication also need to keep up building roads and railways, upgrade airports and ports, develop 5G. The government promotes the digital economy, bringing more jobs and convenience. This page is about sustainable growth policies. It's about environmental protection should be strict. Urge enterprises to reduce emissions and reward environmentally friendly enterprises. The utilization of resources should be reasonable. Use price regulation. Promote energy saving and circular economy. And legislate for protection to ensure long-term economic development. These strategies, when coordinated with each other, can enable Malaysia economy to grow while everyone's life become better and better, moving towards prosperity. That is my presentation about the slides. Thank you, lecturer.
For the next part, I tell you about example in GDP growth with a limited living standard. improvement, which means I have chosen China as my example country, which means China impressive economic growth during its reform era. Beginning in the late 1917, it transformed its economy and rising per capita income and reducing the poverty rate from 64% to 10% by 2004. Despite lifting millions out of absolute poverty, this growth was unevenly distributed, leading to significant disparity. Income inequality, as reflected by a Gini coefficient, rose by 0.31 to 0.45, with a rural area lagging far behind the urban centers. China digitalized a physical system left under resources local government in a poor areas and able to fund the service and adequately. The policy like a hukou system, which means a regulated rural to urban migration, restrict access to higher paying jobs and the urban service for many rural migrants. These structural and policy-related challenges reveal that while China's rapid GDP growth reduced the poverty on a national scale, it was still insufficient to address the deeply ingrained inequalities in living standard between the urban and the rural population. Okay, for the last part, I will talk about example of balanced development, which means I have take South Korea for my example country. The South Korean government has identified a balanced region development as a central policy goal. To achieve this, it has employed two main strategies, which mean reducing the over-concentration of population and economic activities in the capital region, and the second one is fostering equal opportunities in terms of income, employment, and education across the all region. For example, relocating government officer and a public agency from the capital region to Changcheong can help decentralize economic activity, but it might also deepen disparity between the Changcheong and other undeveloped regions like Jeolla. This is evident from the growth trend seen in 1985, which means where the Changcheong has experienced faster GRDP and per capita GRDP growth compared to Jeolla. This measure included creating greenback to restrict sole urban sprawl, which means a living tax limiting the numbers of university and students in the capital area, and relocating government institutions to regional areas. The centralization effort also including transferring some administrative powers from the central government to local authorities.
We have come to the conclusion, the end of the topic. Although it's not sufficient on its own, the rise of GDP is necessary base for raising living standards in less developed countries. The economic growth generates the financial resources required for development by means of the creation. Improving the quality of life depends critically on expenditures, infrastructure, healthcare, education, among other areas. The increase of GDP usually neglects the important issues including the unequal distribution of wealth, a safe and environmental friendly preservation, social service provision, stable government, and so on. Cases of China and South Korea shows that inclusive policies and the intentional reinvestment of gains in GDP into programs that are fair and sustainable are vital. That's the whole point of raising the living standards of a nation. Therefore, it is imperative to have a balanced approach, combining policies aiming to boost GDP with policies that are ecologically conscious, inclusive, and redistributive in order to achieve real, fair, and development in least developed countries. And this is our stand for this motion. Thank you.